Well, welcome to our weekly edition of Homework Help. Well, let's take a look at the homework this week and how you might need some help with it. All right, so we are on chapter 12, and we've had one question assigned, 12.8, and a couple of the dreaded problems assigned. Well, I'm not going to help you with the question because that's pretty much a definition and a little bit of research questions. So no issues I think you're going to have with that regarding the efficient markets hypothesis. So we're going to let that one stand alone. The ones that are probably maybe concerning you a little bit are 12.2 and 12.4. So let me kind of give you some hints, a little bit of homework help for that. Let's jump over to our handy dandy blackboard over here and give you maybe a little bit of suggestions on how you might want to set up those problems.
All right, well, looking at the homework, let's look at that problem 12.2. We've got and hopefully you're following along with me here, and we've got Medical Corporation of America has a current stock price of $36. So we've got a price of 36. We've got a dividend, last dividend, so we've got a dividend. We're collecting some information here. Last dividend was $2.40. Then also it goes on to say, in the view of MCA's strong financial position, the required rate of return for the stock, so I'll just denote that with an E for that stock, is 12%. Okay. And if MCA's dividends are expected to grow at a constant rate in the future, so we know this is going to be a constant growth rate question. Whoops, let's erase that a little bit. This is going to be a constant growth rate. All right, so we know that. If MCA dividends are expected to grow at a constant rate in the future, what is the firm's expected stock price in 5 years? That's the key, in 5 years. So we want to know the price in 5 years. Okay, right there, that tells me we've got something going on with time value of money. Okay, so when we do our time value of money calculations, you know that you're going to need to set up some things. You're going to have a present value. Do we know the present value? Well, we do. 36. Do we know the future value? No, that we don't know. We're going to have to find future value. Do we know the number of periods? Oh, we sure do. That's listed. That's 5. And do we know that's an I. Do we know the interest rate? No, we don't. We need to find that expected growth rate, okay? We know the required rate of return, we know the price, we know the dividend, we know a lot of the components of that expected growth rate model formula. Remember that from the lectures, and hopefully do watch. If you haven't watched the lectures, pause right now and watch the lectures. That's going to be critical. You got to watch the lectures if you're doing the homework. So, but if you remember from the lectures, we've got that we've got the growth rate model and the constant growth rate model, I should say. And we're trying to find a piece of that growth rate model. Let's set up the growth rate model, and then I'll kind of leave you to your own devices. But know that you're eventually going to have to go back to time value of money. and use the calculator of choice. It might be, I would recommend just, the Arachnoid calculator that we've been using. It's a nice free calculation, and you're going to be calculating for a future value, but you got to get all the right inputs so you can calculate for the one unknown. You can't deal with these two unknown inputs. You're just going to solve for that one. All right, but we got to find out what this is going to be. And that interest rate, again, is going to be the equivalent of the expected growth rate. All right, well, let's plug in the expected growth rate model and see what we've got to deal with. So we have got our stock price is 36. We've got that. Equals the dividend, which is 240, right? Times 1 plus the expected growth rate, which we don't know, so I'll just put a question mark, or you could put whatever you want in there. That's the unknown you have to solve for. Divided by, and remember that our denominator on that is the stock's required rate of return. We've got that, which is 12% minus, again, our question mark. Again, you can write that as EXG or whatever you want to write that as. I'll just put a question mark. So you're solving for this question mark, okay? And you're going to have to, isolate the unknown variable to one side of this equation to solve for this. So I'll just kind of leave it at that, and I'll also leave you with watch the video, okay? Watch our lecture video on that. Once you've gotten that, you would have found that expected growth rate, and then that you can bring it back into your TVM calculation. Okay, so hopefully that's not too hard. You're going to take some mechanical steps to get through there to find the unknown, and then you'll solve for TV using time value of money. Okay, and you probably have noticed too that the homework assignments this week are kind of two-steppers. You have to find one thing to get the other thing. So keep that in mind too. So you got definitely a two-step process. All right, well, let's go on to the other question we'll address on the next slide. All right, with our next problem on, that's going to be 12.4, we have some information. All right, so we've got a risk-free rate of 6%. And let's see, assume a risk-free rate of 6% and a market risk premium. I'm just going to call that a market risk premium. Coincidentally, just happens to be 6%. That's just a coincidence. And let's say this is a particular stock called Physicians Care Network, has a beta of 1.5, okay. And we have a dividend. A dividend is given to us, and that dividend was $2 a share. And then we're asked a series of questions. Again, we're always assuming here that constant growth. Okay, that's an assumption there. And then the questions you have to answer is, what would PCN or Physician Care Network stock be valued if the dividend were expected to grow at, and then there's 4 different percentages. So basically what we're dealing with is that expected growth rate is going to be changed, delta, kind of for E meaning changed under a couple of different situations. You're going to be given 4 different changes in that expected growth rate that are going to be given to you. But now so what we're going to, well, let's bring up our old friend, the constant growth model, and see what we can plug in here, because we want to find the value of the stock under these different expected growth rates. Okay? So let's start off with our model. Remember, that's going to be, just to write it down here, we've got price. Again, I'm simplifying from what the book has in there, but price, dividend times 1 plus, expected growth rate. Those are going to be the things that are going to be changing on us, divided by the required rate of return on the equity or the stock, okay, minus that expected growth rate again, okay? All right, everything looks kind of good here. Let's see what can we plug in on this. We have got, well, we're missing something. So we're missing the required. We're going to get stuck here because we don't have the required rate of return on that particular stock. We got the risk-free, we got this market risk premium, we've got a beta, we've got a dividend, we've got an expected growth rate. We've got all of these. We've got this one, and this one, but we don't have this one. So how do we calculate that? We're going to go back and we're going to be bringing back that the security, the SML, the security market line equation on that. And just as a refresher, is going to be, you're going to be able to calculate this required rate of return on the stock by taking the risk-free rate plus the required rate of return on the market, I'll put an M on there, minus the risk-free rate, which we know, times the beta. So let me help you set this up a little bit. Risk-free rate, we know, and we're going to write that as a 0.06 plus, well, what is the required rate of return on the market? We don't have that. We've got this weird thing called market risk premium, and we've got the risk-free rate. Okay, here's the big clue. Again, if you saw the lecture, you're going to be fine. If you didn't see the lecture, you're going to have a hard time. So remember that the required rate of return on the market, okay, difference, market versus the individual stock. Required rate of return on the market is simply the risk-free rate plus whatever premium that you're being paid, that market rate premium. Okay? So you're going to add that up and you're going to plug that in there. Pretty easy. 6 plus 6 is 12%, or written 0.12. Minus risk-free rate, again, that's a no-brainer, times our beta. What was our beta? 1.5, okay? So with this, you're going to have to again do a little two-stepper. You're going to calculate that. You're going to get your required rate of return on your individual stock, and then you're going to be able to plug that into our constant growth model, plug and chug, and you're going to be able to then get your prices on that. So that's kind of one clue with that particular one. Then if you look, there's part B. So you're going to calculate all those for the various constant growth rates, which once you get your required rate of return on the stock, you can it'll be very easy for you. You only have to do that once, and then you're going to be able to answer those other 4 questions underneath there by just plugging in the new expected growth rates that's giving you. Negatives, you got some negatives in there, you got a 0, you got a 5, you got a 10%. Okay, so but it wouldn't be too hard after you kind of get this calculated. The next one is B. There is a part B on this. What would the stock value or price if the growth rate were 10%, but PNC's beta fell to, and it gives you a couple of options. Now, what's nice about the problem is you're going to calculate in here, you are going to have, you're going to be doing 10% in the first part of the problem, so that will sort of save you a little bit. But what you want to do, the key is beta. That's, I guess, the key of that part B is the beta has changed. So when the beta changes, you're going to go, oh, wait a minute. If the beta changes, whether they go up or down or whatever, well, since beta is a component of the required rate of return for the stock, you're going to have to go in and recalculate that. So you'll calculate it with a couple new betas under a couple different situations. That would be the only factor that would change on there. Then once you get this calculated, again, once you get your required rate of return for the stock, you can plug that up into there. You got the correct required rate of return for the stock under the new beta assumption. Run that calculation, and you should be fine in answering those two questions. Also remember, too, to check yourself if you watch the video. What happens? I won't answer. You got to watch hopefully you watch the video. But if beta increases, okay, you know that something happens to the stock price. So in this case, we are dropping the beta. So in this particular question, they want you to calculate a beta at 1 and a beta at 0.5, and our original beta was a 1.5. So on that price that you're going to calculate for the 10% constant growth rate. So you can kind of check yourself. If the beta goes down, my price does something. So check yourself, because if your price is going the wrong way than what it should be, you probably have got the problem wrong, and you got to go ahead and recalculate. All right, so there's homework help for this week. Again, make sure you are watching those video lectures. They will help, I think, hopefully immensely in working through these problems, and hopefully this homework help is kind of set you on the right path to get those problems set up correctly. But keep making a good attempt at this homework, and I'm sure you'll do fine. Everybody did outstanding in the last module, or I should say just about everybody did outstanding in the last module, with many people getting 100%. So hopefully this is working for you. So stay tuned for our next edition of Homework Help next Wednesday to kind of help you with these more difficult and challenging questions.